What's up, everybody? It's your good friend Lukie, and this is my new YouTube channel. Please subscribe to help me. Look on the screen. Don't be a reoccurring viewer. Only 25% of the people watching these videos are subscribing. Hit the bell icon. Subscribe now, please. Welcome to Boxing News Live. This is my rant about the state of boxing and honest opinions that I turn into content every single week. If you like this, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment. Anything and everything helps. Let's get into it. First up, Edgar Berlanga gets a decision win over Jason Quigley, drops him a slew of different times. Top Rank had promoted him up until this point. This was his first fight with Eddie Hearn. This is back-to-back fights from Matchroom Boxing, in which a fighter they just signed the week before, Regis Prograis, now Edgar Berlanga, put on kind of performances that I feel the promotion was hoping they wouldn't get. And what I mean by that is Berlanga, to me, still has the potential. Now, don't run with this quote outside of it, but maybe if you want to. Berlanga still has the potential to be a Hall of Famer. Yet, I look at him and I see that he's wondering, how was he able to get those 16 straight knockouts? How did it come so seemingly easy then? And then when he tries to do it now, it's not happening. Some could point to the level of opponents, this, that, and a third. There might be some truth to that. But I think also another thing is the confidence. You see him wearing a 21-0 hat to the press conference, but at the weigh-in, you're seeing him kind of nervous, talking to the other opponent. There's some nerves there. I get the sense that Berlanga's kind of wondering what's happening because he's hearing the rumblings. He's a guy that was built and marketed as a knockout puncher and has gone to decision for 5 straight times. Everyone's waiting for him to get a stoppage. Not to say Jason Quigley was a hand-selected opponent. Jason Quigley's a class opponent. Underrated fighter. I think this is a good win for him, and Quigley won a lot of rounds against Berlanga, which is troubling. Berlanga got a lot of knockdowns, which edged the fight in his favor, of course. The biggest concern coming away from this is, in a perfect world, Berlanga's not going to go back in competition, and that's where it becomes troubling, because if you're having trouble with this tier of opponent, what's going to happen at the next tier, right? You're probably not going to get that desired result of a knockout. The knockout is what brought the fans to Berlanga. And now we have an ultimatum of where is Berlanga's ceiling. You're going to have a lot of people saying a bunch of nasty and negative things to him. And then you're going to have some people that truly believe in Berlanga. The truth is probably in the middle. I think that what we can say is once he obtained fame, he's gotten into a lot of the famous traps. He's wearing jewelry, designer clothes. There's a lot of pitfalls that can derail the success of a young fighter. Berlanga, to me, still has greatness in him because he created an aura like a main event fighter as a prospect that put him in position, still seemingly as a prospect / contender, to be a main event fighter at the theater at Madison Square Garden. Now it's up to him what he wants from the sport. Because if money is the only thing that drives Edgar Berlanga, this is his ceiling. If he's going after a greatness potential, that's where it is. I've seen some people, one of which I'll cite, Lazy Lefty brings up a good point. If Top Rank let a Puerto Rican fighter walk, maybe he's not the guy, something to that extent, not an exact quote. I think also it comes down to great management. Keith Connolly is a very good manager, and Keith Connolly knows how to do business. And when you have the right people in place that are politicians, they're able to leverage and do things maybe other entities or other managers or other companies wouldn't be as lenient to if you didn't have that person in place. So I think that part of why Berlanga's in this situation with Matchroom is because he has a great manager who got him a great situation. What's next for Berlanga? I don't know, but it seems like for the past 3 fights now, we're in the same situation where Berlanga's hoping to get a knockout. The crowd is really waiting to get going behind Berlanga, and it just doesn't quite happen. And it's getting to a place where he's starting to enter the Jaime Munguia zone. So maybe putting him in with Munguia, as Eddie Hearn threw out as an idea after the fight, might be the one, because it's feeling like Berlanga, someone that burst on the scene, very exciting fighter, and now is someone where there's people that are whispering, has he regressed? And that's never a pleasant place to be in a fighter's space. Undercard, if you want to know about this undercard, on the Sunday podcast, me and my good friend Dakota go into depth. We talk a lot about this fight card, and we go through it. It's more of a nuanced fight card, and because I try to keep these videos to 20-25 minutes, I could probably ramble all the time. So go up into the card section. It's either there or there, and you can click on that, and you can go see that full podcast where there's timestamps that will get you to there, or if you want to be a big supporter of this page, watch the full video. When we go over to the PBC's brand of entertainment, we saw Julian J-Rock Williams get stopped by Carlos Adames. Very, very weird fight. Williams was having success. Adames, big power puncher. Adames was doing what he does. Hits hard, moves people around. There was a sense in the buildup, not the most compelling buildup, I must say, that Adames is marketing himself as the boogeyman. That makes two boogeymen in the division. Middleweight, very kind of lackluster right now. It's lacking that big name. Bob Santos, very high on Adames. Stephen Edwards, great personality in the sport of boxing, back with Julian Williams. It felt like with Williams' recent adversities and the class act individual he is, he's always gracious with how he conducts himself, and I feel that Julian Williams is very sincere in every word he says. He reminds me of a mixture of Bernard Hopkins and Andre Ward. In everything he says, he really deeply reflects and means, which I really appreciate about Julian Williams. The ending of this fight was a premature stoppage, and I think that the sequence after the fight will get remembered because Stephen Edwards got animated, Bob Santos got animated. There was a lot of heated stuff, and I think that when you go back, and if you want to listen to the Dakota podcast that we do on Sundays, we go deeper into this element of it. But Stephen Edwards hinted at the fact that Julian Williams might not fight again, which Julian Williams also didn't look like he was the biggest fan of that being thrown out there. And I think what we saw really at the end of that fight was it was a do-or-die moment in the mindset of the team of Julian Williams, me reading between the lines, and the frustration of a close and competitive fight in their eyes being stopped in that manner was emotionally draining and frustrating. And I think that in this sport, oftentimes when there's these high-stress situations, that's where you can get these chaotic finishes to fights. It's truly a shame that the fight ended that way. Julian Williams was taking a solid amount of punishment in that. I think that you can't overlook that. I also think that Julian Williams was doing a lot better than the judges were giving him credit for. It was about a 77-75 fight, maybe 78-74. I think Adames was ahead. I do think Adames was starting to also have some moments that were getting concerning as someone that thinks so highly of Julian Williams. But I also understand their point because Adames has a level of limitation where he's not unbeatable, and he's prone to gassing out late in fights if you look at the Patrick Teixeira fight. It's just a fight where you're just going to sit back and it'll haunt you because you never want a fighter to feel like the fight was taken out of their hands. Julian Williams, once again, one of the classiest individuals in the sport of boxing, where he's probably done everything about as perfect as you can, wasn't dropped in the fight, and it's a hard loss. For Adames, he told me on Pro Box TV, the team said they're going after David Benavidez. It feels as though they're trying to put themselves in a position to be a fringe A-side star guy for PBC. In this fight, I guess they were the A-side. This didn't really feel like an A-side versus B-side fight. This felt like two known names being put together to see if Showtime would accept this as a suitable main event of a competitive affair. But it looks like Adames is trying to, through his persona and through the way he's crafting who he is as a fighter, is trying to transcend into marquee pay-per-view guy. Bob Santos is right now one of the hottest trainers in boxing, one of the bigger names, and it looks like they're going to target all the biggest names in the sport. The division is rather void of any good names, so it seems like they might even entertain moving up to super middleweight. Erickson Lubin on the undercard said that he'd fight him. It's not the result you want, because it leaves a division that's kind of in flux and stagnant, even more stagnant and in flux. It left me with shoulder shrugs and blank stares as opposed to anticipation, and it left one fighter feeling wronged and possibly burnt out from the sport, which is a shame. As for the undercard of this one, I did watch it, so I can comment a little bit more. Erickson Lubin got a stoppage win over Luis Aries. They stopped the fight at 9. Lubin was pretty much in control of the fight. Aries was counting on a right hand to land. It was pretty uneventful. Lubin's pretty much saying that he wants to fight at middleweight or he'll fight at 154, but he called out the winner, which is now Carlos Adames. Lubin's a guy that coming out of the 1996, 2016 Olympic class, he was supposed to be the guy. He was viewed as probably the best prospect not named Shakur Stevenson out of that group. And he just kind of just hasn't lived up to the potential just yet. I wouldn't write him off because there's still a ton of talent. It just comes down to how he handles this part of his career, because now he's had 2 brutal losses. He had one where he got stopped late by Fundora, and he got stopped really quick by Jermel Charlo. So for Lubin, it's going to be, where can he go? Luis Aries, I feel like he's in a very, very awkward space in boxing where he's going to be testing young fighters to see if they're able to go into a world title position. It's probably the worst spot to be in the sport of boxing. Fernando Martinez opened up the card in a banger against Jade Barana. It was just a brutal, physical, super flyweight fight. Jade Barana was winning the fight on my cards up until Martinez just kind of overpowered him and took over with physical force. Barana's ear seemingly had some form of injury where it was starting to bleed out of the ear. And from that damage, the fight was called off, and a very entertaining fight. For some reason, and could be the level of opposition, the fact that these opponents aren't his name, Martinez is not getting as known as his other super flyweight peers, but he's been in 3 rather exciting fights, and he's just as good as a lot of these fighters. So it's going to be interesting if he's a guy that can emerge into talks to getting big fights. Also, Kazuto Ioka beat Joshua Franco earlier this week. We did a video, emergency video, that Franco came in 6 pounds overweight. Once again, Uncle Lukie saying, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not overreact. Let's hear out the story. Well, Franco retired after the fight. So after he lost the fight, he retired, made a very classy statement and said that there's like a lot of mental strain that's come with boxing. He's done with it. And I think this is a good takeaway on 2 terms. For Ioka, he's probably a Hall of Famer. He's going to go into that next fight, more than likely, against Juan Francisco Estrada to answer who is the best super flyweight. It's also going to be the 2 most unheralded, not marketed in America fighters in the super flyweight division. 2 fighters that have had very little marketing in the United States, fighting for probably who is the best of their era in a division that actually had quite a bit of marketing as of recently. So that's a very strange phenomenon right there. But also for Franco, I think that this shows, if you're a fight fan, there's levels to thinking about the sport, right? If you're a level 1 thinker, you're going to throw insults at a guy. Man, and I'm stealing that from Bilal Mahassan, a level 1 thinker. You can go, man, he missed weight. He's a piece of poo-poo. If you're a level 2 thinker, you might go, well, that's inexcusable. If you're a level 4 or level 5 thinker, you might say, well, why did he miss weight? What was wrong with him that caused him to miss weight? Why is the team saying the fight almost didn't happen? What's going on with this? And I think that's what you should think about sometimes, because when you see someone miss weight by 6.5 pounds, they've been in the game as long as Joshua Franco's been. He recently left his promoter, Golden Boy Promotions. Seems like he's been off TV. He's been through the ringer. He's been grinding in the gym. A guy like that, when they miss weight, there's more to the story. Congratulations to Ioka. I couldn't watch the fight because they just chose not to stream it where I live. I want to touch on Andy Vences real quickly. Andy Vences is a guy that I know really well. Andy's a really, really good fighter. And Andy's a guy who, during the start of my career, was probably the most pivotal. I followed him around. I basically did an internship with Andy's beginning of his career. He went from a club fighter on Don Chargin and Paco Damian shows all the way up to being a world-class fighter who fought under the banner of Top Rank. I'd like to take this moment to hold up the legend Herb Stone. Look at Herb. Now I'm probably all out of focus and stuff, and the video is probably all messed up, but that's okay. Andy's one of these fighters that's like Gabe Rosado. Their work ethic speaks for themselves. Andy was never not in the gym. He trained as hard as any world-class athlete. He trained with the snack team, side by side with Mikey Garcia, Demetrius Andrade, many of the greatest fighters, Devin Haney, and he seemingly won over everyone's respect based on his work ethic. When you think back on his career, you know that he changed trainers a lot, but Angel Cordon Sr. became the guiding voice of the overarching theme of Andy Vences' career. When you look at his biggest moments, he stopped Santiago Gravea, the Wolf. That was a big moment on a Fox Sports 1 Golden Boy Promotions card from Salinas, California. Proposed to his wife, Stephanie, after the fight. Something that I thought would get a little bit more attention, but it really didn't after that. The other moments, Casey Ramos. Look, Andy signed with Top Rank around the same time Gabriel Flores Jr. had signed with Top Rank. It was not the performances that many people were expecting after he had started so strong with knockouts. He started getting stuck in between gears. He fights like Adonis Stevenson, and at times Andy can get stuck looking for shots or just jabbing because he's loading up on a big right hand, kind of like how Adonis Stevenson had, but it seemed he didn't quite have that game-changing power of Adonis Stevenson, but you could tell he always had this intention to really land a mean, nasty shot. After a few performances that I think he would say himself weren't the greatest performances, he found himself in a fight with Casey Ramos, which at the time was the Wizard, went down, sparred Oscar Valdez, did everything the right way, won the fight. Then it was tragedy for Andy's career. His manager, Herb Stone, passes away. After Herb passed away, he fights Eric De Leon. He probably should have won the fight. More than likely should have won the fight. Gets a draw. If we're going to be fair, I think that we never saw Andy at the same level as the Eric De Leon fight. That his apex mountain is the Eric De Leon fight because that was the greatest performance he ever put forth. I don't want to say there's a level of athlete depression because that's for him to say, but it felt as though after that fight it was hard for him to get as motivated because he, not my words, maybe not even his, I got a sense that he kind of felt as though politics were stopping him from opportunities. Ioka had a world title. He thought he was probably going to get that, or Ito was going to had a world title. That didn't go his way, and it became about the politics. And I think he got, at times after the De Leon fight, obsessed with the political nature of boxing. And then you kind of saw a run of hard fights, losing to Albert Bell, but Albert's a wonderful person and a tremendous fighter. You know, Henry LeBron, Juno Carroll, Luis Alberto Lopez. None of these are bad losses, but to have them happen over and over when you're a world-class fighter, it gets you further and further away. This past weekend, he lost an 8-rounder to a guy who's fought on the world level. I can't even pronounce his name. Solid fighter, a reputable fighter, a tough fighter, a dirty fighter, but a fighter that if you look at Andy's resume, he's beaten guys like this before. He's beaten dirty fighters. He's beaten tricky fighters. The reaction time and the speed isn't the same. So I wanted to take time in this video to praise Andy Vences because a lot of times people don't show love to people who make it as far as him. They go, oh man, you weren't a world champion, you suck. He came from the club circuit, made it to the signed promotion entities, and he's someone that a lot of people have watched on Saturday nights and created an emotional investment with. Think about, and this is for Andy, think about how far you came amongst your peers, amongst the people you started with on those Paco Presents Boxing and Don Charging cards. All the people you started with, look back on that. If you look behind me, one of the cards he started on, it's right behind me to the left. Think of all those people and think of where you finished. There's nothing to be ashamed of. We all want to be great because we want to make sure our life matters. God gave us a life for a reason. And I think the hardest thing about being competitive and being an athlete is you're saying, whatever supreme being put me down here, they put me down here to be this extraordinary athlete. And only 4 champions exist at best at any given time. 2 or 3 are golden child prospects. You might have an emerging contender who won an upset. There's not that many spots, and it comes down to when you're peaking, how the landscape of the sport is, and if you got it. Some guys just overperform fight night. They don't do it before. So for Andy, I want to praise you on your career. It was a fantastic career. You kicked the doors down for me early on. And, I mean, nothing but respect for him. It's one of the best careers I've ever seen that's a testament to hard work and making things happen. And I think it's a success story.